Hey guys, what's going on? Hope you all had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I know I certainly did. I've gotten a lot of stuff done lately, so I've been trying to kind of look for some new things to kind of talk about with techniques that maybe I haven't described in enough detail, or maybe I brushed over in other videos, and kind of work on showing particular techniques by themselves without anything else. Just that one technique. And I found one recently that was, I think, a really good example of this, and it was actually brought up to me by a friend of mine. I forget how he exactly worded it, but he was talking about how do I model clear coat peeling. Clear coat peeling is a very interesting kind of weathering. It's a very fine weathering, and you do see it a lot on older locomotives. Especially a good example would be early CSX locomotives, early Union Pacific SD40-2s. You saw that they would have major paint failure, clear coat failure, where you would see the paint peeling and everything like that, and then the clear coat would be this white halo. It was pretty crazy. It's a cool little weathering effect, and you still see it today in some cases, especially nowadays with the clear coats they use on like the GVOs and ECEs. You still see this kind of effect. The best way to describe the clear coat effect, the peeling effect that I'm going to be doing here, if any of you have ever seen an old Honda Civic, a Honda Accord, like a 97, 98 Honda Civic, maybe a 2000, 2001, earlier, before the quality of the materials they were using, like the clear coat, kind of went up a little bit, you would recall, if you've ever seen one of those vehicles, the clear coat peeling is catastrophic on those. You would get the white pitting, and then it would just start peeling back down to basically bare paint. And that's exactly what we're going to be modeling here. So if you guys have any kind of like an old car like that and you have that clear coat peeling, that's exactly what we're going to be modeling, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you here in this video. So we'll go ahead and go over to the workbench here, and I'll show you guys the subject. So the model I have on deck for this particular project is a model I've been working on for quite some time now. I've actually been working on this for a couple months. My standards for weathering have really gone up lately. I've put a lot more detail into making these locomotives these days, a lot more detail parts, a lot more new techniques for truck and weathering, fuel tank weathering. So these things usually take a long time for me to crank out. But this is a good example of a locomotive that has some of this clear coat chipping according to prototype photos. And I've already done an example, the smallest example here on the nose, as you can see. This is what we're going to be modeling. Do you guys see that? Okay. Hard to believe that's a model, isn't it? Yeah, pretty crazy, huh? Get this in better focus. This is what we're going to be modeling, though. You guys can see this white, gray, kind of chipped look on top of the paint here on the blue nose of this engine. That's the clear coat chipping that we're going to be modeling here. All this is the effect of time and that clear coat chipping off. This is a higher traffic area too. Maintenance personnel are always climbing up on the nose here to access the sand hatch, or do maintenance, change light bulbs on the number boards, maybe work on the bell here, a headlight, whatever it is on units like this. So you see a lot of this clear coat peeling on the noses of these engines. This is a particularly heavy traffic area, and you see this a lot. That's basically my point here. So this is a good example. You guys can see the kind of the weathering effects. This is what we're going to be trying to achieve here, only this time we're going to be working on a larger area, which would be the majority of the cab roof. Not just the cab roof, but the air filter cabinet here, and kind of in some areas along the dynamic blister is where I want to kind of focus on this. The materials I'm going to be using are the same that I usually use. I prefer the Anita's brand acrylics. The color I'm going to be using is straight charcoal gray Anita's acrylic. If you're modeling severe, I mean we're talking really severe clear coat peeling where you can see like the defined white color that you see a lot of times, like on an NS locomotive for example, some of those high hoods had really bad clear coat failure, and that's more of a white color. You can basically stick with your straight flat white, something like this. You can even mix these two colors together, depending on if you need to try to match a particular color. You can do that with the acrylic, which is absolutely wonderful. So you can choose the color I need, but in this particular case it's a gray kind of appealing color that I'm going for here, so I'm going to be using the charcoal gray. Now, brushes I'm going to be using, I only need two. My standard choice, I have my Atlas 10-0 number 155. I absolutely love these brushes for this detail work. Nice sharp point is preferred here, guys. Always try to use a really sharp tip brush for this kind of detail work. Anything else will just leave you disappointed, unless you're trying to model some rough clear coat chipping, but even still we have a different brush for that. It's the combination of these two brushes that I'm going to show. The other brush is again my tried and true Citadel number 5. This guy right here, a nice sharp tip. This is what we're going to use for the actual dry brushing technique overhand. So with these two brushes and this paint bottle, as always, prototype photos are the key to modeling this. Really try to focus on the defined lines. what does it look like? Again, if you have your Honda Civic with the peeling clear coat, go out there, just stare at your hood for a little while. Don't care what the neighbors say, just look at it, just think. And then see how it peels, think, how do I represent that on my model? So I've done that quite a bit, obviously. I've looked at a lot of photos in this particular case of this exact engine, which has some decent clear coat peel, which is pretty interesting. These dark blue HLCX Bluebirds, as they're called, they don't usually have this kind of effect, but this one does, so it's a pretty interesting subject. So starting off, I'm going to simply take my bottle of Anita's charcoal paint. I just have it right in the cap here. I'm not going to dilute this down. You don't need to have it diluted down. The key with this fine tip brush, you only dip the very surface of the brush in the paint. Don't go dipping in the whole thing. Just the tip. That's all you need right there. That's the perfect amount. So next, you go in and you just carefully start kind of working in some fine lines. So if I zoom in here, you guys will be able to kind of see this. You can see that first little squiggle. We're going to make this a little bit better. Take your time with this as always, but you basically start working in the outer border of where the clear coat starts to peel, and this is the part you work on first, and you just kind of make it look kind of scruffy here. Kind of broken up a little bit. That's a little too much. Try not to go too heavy with it. In that particular case, we can work that out a little later, but I'll just go ahead and leave it. But always think of this kind of technique on raised surfaces like this, like on the fine sharp edges of like this blister here. This is where you see this a lot, and this is where I want to try to kind of replicate this effect. I'm not going to do it on the entire box here, but just kind of in certain parts. Just like this. Keeping it kind of random here. But this is the defined line. We're going to go in and do some dry brushing effects to enhance this and kind of fan it out a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about this area here either, because this particular area in the back is going to get a little bit of exhaust to it, but we'll still put a little bit of this in the back here, and this is going to be a heavier kind of a heat damaged area in the back with the heat coming out of the exhaust. You think of these locomotives working hard up grade or something like that, or pulling a long train, they really get abused, so you get a lot of heat damage too, and that can kind of play into some of this peeling paint and stuff like that. For example, like the Union Pacific locomotives, you would think of those have very significant clear coat and paint failure because of the heat. So that's the base effect there. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and switch to my Citadel number 2, or Citadel number 5 rather, excuse me. And I'm basically going to just take over this to the paper here. I'll pick up a little bit of paint in the brush. Again, just the tip of the bristles. Don't load this up. Just like this. See how sharp that is? You could shave with that. Okay? So you just kind of take a little bit of that extra paint off the bristles, just like that. Not too much. Come back over to your area. We'll again zoom in on it. And all you got to do, simply take and around those lines, just start fanning it in. Get a little bit more paint, and then fan it in. Just like this. This is representing the rough surface around this. Again, keep this concentrated around these lines. Don't try to work this out too much. Just around those lines. And this is why you need the finest possible brush for this kind of thing. You want to keep the this kind of motion relatively isolated, only in the parts you need. We'll fan that out. Now, we'll need to clean this up just a little bit, and this is where a wet Q-tip kind of comes in handy. We need to clean up some of this extra material at the bottom here. So I'm just going to wipe some of this off. I'll leave that little spot there just for some effect there. And then I just kind of come in with the Q-tip and then bring it right up to the edge, basically by roughly blotting it around the white lines, the stains, and you can see it kind of pushes it back a little bit and sharpens up the lines a little bit. And again, you have that kind of color difference working it in like this. Just space it out. A little too much there. It's alright. Just blotch it back together. There we go. And essentially, you have paint bleaching. Just that easily. You guys can see what that looks like. And what I would essentially do after this point is I would continue on with this process, which I'll show a little bit on the dynamic brake a little bit as well. But after I got all this done, I would just go back and then put all my rust and everything else in. In this particular case, again, refer to kind of how the nose looks here, where we have some of that rust starting to kind of eat away. And this is all done with some burnt umber, a little earth brown, and of course I'll go back with some oils and some chalks to kind of enhance certain areas. But it's very, very basic. But, I mean, you guys can see this is all pretty easy here. You can kind of work pretty fast at this. Once you get your motion down, you get a feel for it. You can usually do it pretty fast, but try to refer to your prototype photos. If you're doing it just out of basically like freelancing it or anything like that, just keep it wobbly and random like this. Clearcoat's not going to be perfect if it peels. It's going to be really random. But this is another area where heat kind of plays into it, so you get a lot of this peeling. And again, I don't know why with this paint job on this engine, maybe it was a different, cheaper quality paint that they use, I don't know, but this one in particular has some significant Clearcoat peeling on the dynamic blister here, and that's what I was trying to kind of refer to here. But you guys can see how quickly that was done. We're literally within a few seconds here, compared to some other techniques which might take a little while. Again, I'll go back and just start blotching in some of that acrylic. Just like this. This is a bit more of a heavier patched area, so I'm going kind of heavier with the paint as well. Just like this, kind of fanning it out a little bit in between. So the last thing you can do with some of these rust effects on the chipping here is to enhance it with a little bit of oil paint. And I like to just kind of go in and add some of these highlights to certain areas. What you see a lot of times is when the Clearcoat peels, you get these little bits of rust that kind of form with it. And I like to enhance that by using a little bit of acrylic as a base for some of this rust. And then I just go back and basically add a little bit of oil. And then just kind of fan it out a little bit, just for varied effect. So here's the finished effects. As you can see, I've added some oils to them to enhance them. Still got a little work to do, like chalk work and such, but this is a good example of the Clearcoat chipping. There's the top portion, and then the portion on the radiator section and the radiator fans, and dynamic fans. Looks pretty good. And it's all very easy to do. I still got a lot of work to do on this particular engine, so it'll be a while till it's done, but that's just another one of the really nice effects that you can do on some of these models where needed. Okay guys, so that's just a really cool effect you can do on other models like this. Okay guys, so that's just another one of the cool effects you can do in scale model form. This is, again, another technique I've kind of wanted to show for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it, so hopefully this kind of answers how I do this particular effect. And you can, again, adjust this for different variations, and again, refer to prototype photos of, you know, just how heavy it is. In a particular subject like this, it's pretty light, so I only had to demonstrate it in a couple little areas, but it's enough to give you guys basically the idea of how to do it. So hopefully this answers you guys' questions. I'll try to keep making more videos like this as I find more things to kind of cover in detail. If you guys have any suggestions of stuff you want to see in more detail, be sure to let me know. You guys can comment. You can get a hold of me on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook as well. My Facebook page is Dan's Custom Trains. Daniel Arnold is my name. You guys can follow me there and see more content. My Instagram is CoolHandDan05, all lowercase, and again, you guys can follow my work there and see what's new, and follow my model work as well. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something from this video, and I will see you next time.